Yeah, thanks, Kylie. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the IEP webinar series in partnership with the Better Health Generation. This is the fifth in our series of 8 webinars with our partners, and every other webinar has been incredibly well received. Thanks to Kylie and the team working really hard on putting this stuff together. I'm personally really quite excited about today's webinar entitled Resilience and Bouncing Back. I think we're going to have to show quite a lot of that over the coming weeks. Please make sure you sign up for the rest in the series. The links are published through the IEP Learning Network e-bulletin, which goes out on a Wednesday morning to those lucky people that get it. Stay safe, stay well, and get chatting on the link. I've been saying hello to a number of people today from all over the UK. It's wonderful to see you. Everywhere seems sunny today, which is great. And remember that all the webinars are recorded. Yeah, absolutely. All the webinars are recorded and available on the IEP YouTube channel. So over to you, Kylie, and thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for the introduction, and thank you again. I just want to reiterate the importance of the chat. And Helen mentioned it before. If you are chatting on the chat link, which is in the menu below your screen, please make sure that you use the drop-down box to add all attendees, or otherwise it's only myself and my colleagues on the panel who will be seeing your message. IEP has 2 key goals. One is to improve the skills and education for frontline staff, and the second is to allow us an opportunity to network. So please take the opportunity to network on the chat, and you can only do that if you open up your link to all attendees and reach out to somebody that you haven't reached out for in a while. The other technical point is on the below menu bar, you will see a Q&A section. This is probably the best place to put a question. I welcome any questions. You can also ask a question anonymously on the Q&A bar. And it just makes us keep to track with these questions and allows us to answer them clearly. So ask as many questions as you like during this session. Today is much more of an interactive session. You will have received the assessment tool before tonight's presentation. So please take the time to finish that. If you haven't done so already, I'll be alluding to that at the end of the presentation. One of my introductions today was going to be talking about our organisation and the things that we do, but I'm going to keep that really brief tonight because I want to really pay my respects to all of the families out there in the UK who might have been touched by somebody who has passed away due to coronavirus. And I want to take a moment to just, all of us on the line, to just stop and reflect for the families and all of the people that have touched anyone that might have passed away. And I know there's a significant amount of people in the UK in that situation. So I'm just going to take a moment to have everybody on the line reflect on that. Thank you everyone for taking that time. I can't imagine the pain that those people are going through. So thank you. And at the expense of the Better Health Generation UK and my normal introduction spiel, I'll launch straight into what today's about. And it's about resilience and bouncing back. If you want to be resilient and you want to bounce back, we've already discussed a range of coping strategies in the Thrive model, which is time structured, helpful thinking, being reasonable about the information that we gather and recognizing what we can control. It's also about increasing our connectedness. It's about our values, and it's about making sure we have time to enjoy or take some enjoyment in each day. So if you've attended any of these webinars in the past, you will have also received the Thrive Daily Planner. I'm keen to hear how that is going for people who are using it. send us a message on the chat. We'd love to hear. But today is extending on resilience and is talking about how emotional intelligence might help you to be more resilient and to bounce back. So tonight's presentation will focus around how we can build our emotional intelligence to deal with the current circumstances, deal with the restrictions, deal with the change, as well as deal with the resilience and add to our resilience. So let's launch right back in. So what is emotional intelligence? Let's talk about it. It's more than IQ, but it's actually more important than IQ. I've included this image here of the left brain versus the right brain, and to simplify what emotional IQ is, it's about that right side of our brain talking to the left side of our brain. Emotional intelligence is how we are firstly self-motivated, how we are self-aware, how we self-regulate, what our social skills are like, and what our social awareness is like. And when you combine those 5 factors, that gives us our emotional intelligence quotient. So like IQ, emotional intelligence can be measured. And what we know is that from the research, the average leader has an emotional IQ of more than 14 points higher than another type of role within the business. We also know from a performance perspective that the higher your emotional intelligence is, the more you outperform others. Some of the research is estimating it's up to about 25%. So that's how important emotional intelligence is. People who have lower emotional intelligence, if we compared people within an organisation, those on the lower emotional intelligence scale would find us with at least 25% of those performing poorly or worse than somebody with higher emotional intelligence. So it's a pretty important concept to have and understand, particularly in the face of adversity and in the face of the current circumstances and change. What we know about COVID-19 and the circumstances now is that leaders will surface to the top. It's a natural reaction. We will see some really good leaders. Some of you have probably seen on the news some great leaders in countries, and some of you are probably thinking that maybe that's not a great leadership. But what we know is that one of the key factors of leadership is emotional intelligence. So I think it's a really interesting concept to consider for us each individually while we've got the time to have a think about it. So let's go through these 5 factors. And as you will be aware, the questionnaire that I sent out earlier today also considers these 5 factors. So what is self-motivation? It is really the why. Why do you want to achieve this? Why do you want to do this? We are all motivated by either intrinsic or extrinsic factors. The most powerful motivators are those intrinsic factors. So the sense of autonomy, the sense of learning, or the sense of mastery that you want to get. What is your motivator? What is your why? And how do you play that out each day? Are you optimistic? Do you remind yourself of the why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And do you reflect on your journey and look at different ways that you might be able to achieve self-motivation? So in order to motivate yourself, you do need to have an end goal. You need to know what that end goal is, and you need to be able to track yourself towards that goal. So being self-motivated is one key component of emotional intelligence. And it really is a self-discovery factor here. It's not something I can put into a questionnaire. It's not a factor that's in the questionnaire that I sent out to you today. It really is a self-discovery of the things that intrinsically and extrinsically motivate you and why you want to get to where you want to get to. Self-awareness, my favourite topic. Being aware of your own emotions, knowing what they are. And I say this to clients all the time. It's really easy with emotions. They're normally one word. And you can see from this scale and the wheel here that all of these are one word. So to differentiate what's a thought and what's an emotion, we normally have thoughts that are a cluster of words, whereas our emotions are one word. But being self-aware also means knowing how to articulate what the emotion is that you're experiencing, as well as understanding the intensity of that emotion. I've spoken before about understanding intensity and making sure that we, visualize our emotions based on a thermometer reading where 100% is the top of the emotion. You're at the top of your stress levels, or you're at the top of your frustration levels, and 0 is I don't have any of that emotion, or I've got 10%. So to be self-aware, we need these two key factors. We need to know how to articulate the emotion, and we also need to know and understand the intensity. And self-awareness is a personal experience. I can tell if people are self-aware. I can tell as a psychologist who's self-aware and who's not. But I certainly can't tell the feelings, and I can't mind read the kinds of feelings that somebody is individually having. So self-awareness is personal, but you need to articulate it. The other really important point about intensity, and I've spoken about this before in relation to stress and performance, is that if we are overwhelmed by emotions, and we do have 100% sadness, depression, any of the emotions that you saw on the previous wheel, we often find ourselves difficult to respond to change, and we find ourselves a little bit demotivated. We're kind of strung and halted by this whole emotion and the intensity of this emotion. However, when we get to an average intensity of emotions, we have the optimum chance to change and the optimum chance to improve. So I'm kind of thinking that we need to start considering, when it comes to emotional intelligence and resilience and self-awareness, we need to start grading the different feelings that you're having, because when feelings get kind of over the 75 zone, we need to start doing something about it before it debilitates you. That was a hard word. Debilitates you from moving forward and stops you from achieving what you want to achieve in life. So how do we get your emotions to kind of 60%? That's the optimum range. You've got a little bit of room to move, but you're in that optimum range. The third concept in emotional intelligence that we can all work on is self-management and our ability to manage those emotions. We first understand how to articulate them. We understand the intensity of them. What do we do now? Let's look at what happens when our emotions take over, and when they take over, it makes us hard. It's very difficult for us to make decisions. Previously, I've spoken about the ABCDE model, but I'll reiterate it here. It is the most effective way that you can self-regulate your emotions. The example here is that you've got a peer at work who's not meeting their deadlines and not doing their work. And the thoughts that you might have at that time is, they always do this. They are so lazy. It's completely unfair. The consequent feelings you might experience are stress at 90%, again, above the threshold. It's going to be debilitating. The way that we might reframe this situation is, maybe there's something else going on for my peer at this time. And that might still cause you to feel stressed, but again, you're back down into a more performance zone with your emotions. So mastering the ABCDE framework will help you to be able to self-regulate. If you're over 75 on your emotional thermometer, you're not going to be able to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, and it's going to hamstring you with resilience. Don't be afraid, by the way, to also write this down. A lot of people I work with in corporate settings and in clinical settings find it really helpful to write this down as a starting point. It's quite surprising when you put your thoughts down on paper how different they actually look and feel and sound when they're in black and white. So don't be afraid to draw this up in a notebook or a diary and start monitoring or tracking the particular thoughts that you're having. Start practicing identifying the thermometer and how intense those emotions are for you. Because again, the two other aspects of emotional intelligence that I spoke about before, you need to articulate feelings and you need to be able to identify the intensity. So what can we do about self-regulation? Well, we can use the ABCDE, as I just mentioned. We can also not start our day at 50. I must have said this a million times, this comment. If you're going into work or you're about to go onto a meeting or a situation's coming up and you already know you're at that limit, you're at 50%, and one small comment's going to just take you over the 75 zone, do something before you start the meeting, because it's very difficult to get from an intensity level of stress or any other feeling at 25% to over 75% in a couple of minutes. It's important to track. However, the opposite of that is also true. If we start at 50% of that intense feeling, it's really easy to flip your lid over the top of that. So don't start at 50%. Do something about it. Make some time for relaxation. Use a small progressive muscle relaxation strategy to kind of just, decrease the intensity. Draw up an ABCDE journal. Take the intensity out before you start something. There's obviously meditation is also helpful, and finding other coping strategies that work. ABCDE modeling, that might not work for anger. It might be something else you need first before you're able to calm down. So a good example is finding the thing or the coping skill that helps you to self-regulate based on the type of emotion that you're having. I'm sure if I was working with an angry client and I asked them to do an ABCDE diary and sit down, that wouldn't end in a happy situation. So again, different emotions, different strategies, and it is a really personal opinion about your emotional intelligence. I look at the LEAP model as an example here. Using good conflict management skills is also a part of self-regulation. And the LEAP model is really letting the client talk and listening, empathizing with the client, assisting them if I can assist them, and then partnering with them. And that's a great example of how I would deal with a client who's angry rather than launching into the ABCD framework. The fourth skill in emotional intelligence is around social skills. Social skills are verbal and non-verbal. It's the things that we do when we meet somebody else and interact with them. It's obviously social skills require a really in-depth understanding of how to interact with others, but they also require a good understanding of the content and what you're going to communicate with another person. Social skills from an emotional intelligence perspective also include your team building skills. How good are you at understanding and analysing teams and helping teams to come along a journey? Again, conflict management skills, that's a part of how we might manage social settings. If you wanted to build on these skills though, you would need to enhance both your non-verbal and your verbal communication skills as well as your written skills, because social skills also require you to get your message across clearly and to be heard clearly from the message that you're giving. If you also wanted to build your social skills and your social skills as part of your EIQ, you would learn more about teams and team dynamics, and you would practice assertive skills. So let's talk about how to use assertive skills. This is my favourite slide. I've always got a favourite slide, but this is my favourite slide on this presentation. So if we look at the three modes, the three key modes of communication, they are aggressive communicators, passive communicators, and assertive communicators. So there's three key communication styles. Depending on the situation, you may fleet between all three of those communication styles. But I'm going to give you a tip today that will help you to always be in the assertive style. Both the passive style and the aggressive style of communication leads to a sense of guilt and a sense of frustration. So if you spend a lot of your communication time in the passive communication area, you would tend to have the attitude that I care about you and I care about you only. So in other words, my feelings aren't considered at all. I don't get anything I want out of communication, and it's completely all one-sided, but it's the opposite side. If you communicate in a more aggressive style, you tend to have the attitude, I care about me and I care about me only. And it's all about my ideas, nothing to do with your ideas. I'm not interested in your ideas. Now, in order to build your emotional intelligence, you need to develop an attitude that says, look, I care about you and your opinions, and I care about me and my opinions, and I care about getting to a solution here and getting to some shared solution. And the best way to do that is to start your sentences and your communication with these three phrases. The first one is, I see. So what is it that you notice about the situation or the other person without being judgmental? In the example that we have above, which is the peer not meeting the deadlines, we've seen the ABCDE framework for that. The example I would use is, I can see that you've been really busy and quite distracted with your work at the moment. It's exactly what I'm seeing. Maybe distraction might be a bit judgy, but I can see that you've been quite busy with your work at the moment. The second part of my communication would be, I feel or I think. I think it's been hard for you to meet the deadlines that we've been setting. I've noticed the last two we've set on projects over the last 2 days have come in late. The next phase is phase 3. I'd rather. I'd rather that we sat down and discussed a way that we could achieve these deadlines together so that everybody else in the project aligns to our way of thinking and the overall goal of the project is achieved. So again, you can see how in the first phrase we talk about the you, the second phrase we talk about the me, and the third phrase we talk about the solution. It meets the criteria for assertive communication. The fifth skill in emotional intelligence is having a social awareness. Empathy is fairly key here. So understanding when you walk into a room exactly what kinds of feelings somebody might be having in that room. Now that requires you to be a really great analyst of body language, behaviours, understanding the circumstances of the event that you're at and where you're at. And the only way to improve these skills is to do a bit of people watching, which I quite love, but also to increase and enhance your listening skills. This requires all of those active listening techniques that we've been talking about for a really long time, in things like paraphrasing, repeating back to the client or the person that you're talking to in your words what they've just said, and checking to make sure that you've understood what they've just said. It also, as I had previously said, paying attention to body language. Is the body language passive, aggressive, or assertive? And you can almost tell those three categories fairly quickly. But there are nuances in other feelings that we tend to notice in people. So the fifth really important and probably the most advanced element of emotional intelligence is reading the room and understanding how each of those people feel in that room. Now, I asked you all to have a look at the questionnaire that I sent out to you. Basically, you can see in the questionnaire that each of the factors that I've discussed this morning, are aligned. So I've aligned this presentation with self-awareness, with self-management, with social skills, with social awareness, with motivation. And if you did get a chance to complete the questionnaire, you'll know if you need to develop a goal to improve in any of those areas. Again, it's a personal goal, but a high level of emotional intelligence will lead us to having more leaders within your business, which is going to be important to help us through this change process. Many of the things that are happening in the UK at the moment will probably still be happening at Christmas. And if that's the case, we will need leaders, and we will need more people who are emotionally intelligent. So the good news about emotional intelligence is, unlike IQ, it can be improved. You can't improve your IQ. The average person has an IQ of about 100. You can't improve that. That's static. We have it forever. But emotional intelligence can be improved. Your IQ doesn't make a difference to your emotional intelligence. You could have somebody with a lower IQ and a really high emotional IQ. And it comes back to these 5 factors. So where do you sit? And what are you going to do about your emotional intelligence? Because it's such a personal thing. I can see it in people, but that's what I'm trying to do. But it's about you taking some responsibility to address each of these 5 factors in your lives. So I might hand over to my colleague and the CEO of the Better Health Generation UK to just quickly talk you through some of the strategies that we're going to be using to help you to build your emotional intelligence. Are you there, Natalie?
I am, yes. Can you just enable my camera?
Of course. Let me just make sure I can do that. Yeah. That work at your end? There you are.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes, thank you. Well, hello everybody. Thank you, Kylie, for the presentation. I thought it was excellent, and I think it's good for us all to reflect, because I think at the moment we need to do that. There's so much going on for us all, and I think at the beginning, taking the time to think of all the people that we've lost in the UK and obviously across the world, the numbers are phenomenal and rising every day, which is really sad. I think the presentation today certainly does make you think about yourself, and obviously thinking about our service users. I know a few people, as Kylie was presenting, were asking about tools and resources, and being able to get more involved and understand this subject better. We are going to be running the 6 workshops that are aimed at advisors, or really any member of staff within an employability setting, whether that's a manager, team leader, or an advisor that's directly working with the clients. And within session 3 and 4, we will be extending on what Kylie's presented today and taking that through to the next level and providing more resources and tools to support you with your own resilience and enabling you to be able to support your job seekers or your staff members with resilience, motivation, commitment. So yeah, definitely in session 3 and 4, we will be going back and building on what we've started to work on today. So yeah, the 6 sessions, and they start next week. We got a phenomenal amount of people contacting us following the webinar last week, but we do still have some places, and we'd love you to join us. We're also going to be delivering some workshops that are aimed directly to the job seeker, which again start next week as well. They start on Tuesday, the 12th of May. The job seeker sessions run at 11 AM and the advisor sessions commence at 12:30. The job seeker sessions, we have had at the moment less uptake, but I think there was perhaps a lack of understanding. So actually some staff have approached us and said they want to come on them. The actual sessions are aimed to the job seeker. The idea is it will support you with your contact. So those sessions last about 45-50 minutes, and they will happen each week for 6 weeks. They are priced at exactly the same as the advisor sessions. And the aim of those is to build up that contact, support them with their self-care, their resilience, motivation. What does work look like now? Obviously, things are very different in our current world, and I think so in our new world. I think as the government talk, we will not be going back as things were previous to COVID-19. So also looking at how can they land the job in the current circumstances. There are jobs out there, so how can we support the job seekers to do that, and in turn obviously support advisors to ensure the contact levels are there and we're supporting those clients to the best of our ability. So that was just really giving you a whistle stop of both sets of sessions that we're running commencing next week. If you want more information, don't hesitate to contact myself or to contact Andy. I don't know if we've got another slide with our contact details on. I don't think we have, but we can just pop those up, I'm sure, up there. I know they were there last week on the presentation, but we can ensure that you've got those. I'm sure whether it's through chat, whether Andy just pops those on the chat now so that you've got our contact email addresses and phone numbers. But please don't hesitate to contact us. We have been contacted by a couple of companies for us to run some bespoke programs that are focused to their needs as a business. We're also happy to do that. Clearly we're running, these sessions have been complimentary, and the future sessions that we're running, we're purely just running them at a very basic cost. The idea isn't about making lots of money, it's purely about reaching out to as many people as we can and supporting as many people as we can in these uncertain times. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. I might just check in with Helen to see if there's been any questions.
We haven't had any questions this week, but we've had lots of comments on how useful it's been, and lots of people talking about how they've written lots down to take away and use.
Oh, that's excellent. So no one likes to ask the psychologist questions when we're talking about emotional intelligence. So that's normally the trick, is to not ask. So do take some time. We are loading these recordings on the IEP YouTube channel. So if you were taking some notes and you missed anything that was said today, please take a moment to have a look at the recording. Our next webinar topic will be slightly more focused around the skills that you use with job seekers. I'm working on a presentation for you on how to provide assessments over the phone or over video, and how to do that effectively with job seekers. So how to help job seekers to address the barriers and match them to the current labour market. And when I talk about the current labour market, I talk about the current jobs that are going in the UK at the moment. And obviously I'll be working really closely with Natalie and Andy around making sure that assessments and an assessment of a job seeker is the same all across the world, but the labour market that you're in at the moment is particularly, well, I guess it's really similar to Australia. We have a depressed hospitality market at the moment, but there are other jobs going in health. There are some other jobs in distribution. So next week's session will be really focused on the skills that you use with job seekers so that we can help people to move back into the workforce as quickly as possible. So guys, we'll leave the chat on. If you want to chat with anyone that you haven't chatted to for a really long time and you see them on the list, please go ahead and chat. We'll keep that going as we usually do for 10 minutes. And it's lovely to see everyone connecting again. I hope you have a great day and thank you for listening.